The gunman who opened fire at Fort Hood, killing 3 people and wounding 16 others before committing suicide, was an Iraq war veteran being treated for mental illness. The incident, the second deadly shooting on that base in the past 5 years. We'll speak with former FBI agent, Army Ranger, and West Point graduate Chad Jenkins about the standard of security measures and what can be done to ensure veterans are receiving adequate treatment.
And the Supreme Court strikes down the limit on the total amount of money wealthy donors can contribute to candidates and political committees. But critics say such limits are essential to ensuring a functional democracy. Newsmax contributor James Herson joins us for a discussion on the rights of political groups and whether the limit on donations was a violation of the First Amendment.
And Iran has chosen a former hostage taker involved in the 1979 seizure of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran to serve as its ambassador at the United Nations. Al Golacinski, the former security officer at the American Embassy in Iran and one of the hostage taken in the 79 seizure, joins us to talk about this latest diplomatic effrontery and Iran's hostile attitude toward the U.S. It's Hour 3 of America's Forum.
To draw attention to an extraordinarily dangerous situation that our country faces under current law, which allows known to be granted visas to the United States under the cover of being ambassadors to the United Nations.
Senator Ted Cruz introducing legislation this week to prevent known terrorists from obtaining visas to enter the United States as ambassadors to the United Nations. So why now? Well, that's because Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has named Hamid Abu Talabi as Iran's new ambassador to the UN. Abu Talabi was a member of the Muslim student group following the Imams Line, the group that held 52 Americans hostage in Tehran for 444 days from 1979 till 1981. The group are still active, and Abu Talabi's photo is featured on their official website, celebrating the hostage crisis. The Iranian government has already applied for a U.S. visa on his behalf, and we are waiting for the reply from the State Department. Well, joining us right now to talk about this, J.D. Hayworth, Ed Berliner here. Welcome back to America's Forum. Ed, this is an interesting story, and you actually reached out to one of the former hostages to get his take on how he feels about this situation.
It was 444 days in captivity, and it's been 35 years. You'd be surprised how many people still don't even think about it or even know the story, if you will. Al Golacinski was the regional security officer at the embassy on that day. Al, thanks for joining us today on America's Forum.
Good afternoon.
Al, how painful is it for you after those 444 days and these 35 years when you hear that one of your captors may be allowed into the United States in an ambassadorial position, a position of authority? That has got to make you angry.
Well, certainly it does not make me happy. I'm astounded that year after year, time after time, we are confronted with the same type of behavior by the Iranian government. I mean, the bottom line, I could sum the whole thing up by saying that to this day, they refuse to admit that they did anything wrong, that there is that they have no blame to accept, even though they violated every principle of international law and custom, and not to mention the Vienna Conventions to which they're signatory for the conduct of diplomatic and consular relations. So yeah, it's probably the nicest thing I could say is it's dumbfounding at best.
Well, let's not be nice here then. I mean, of course, within reason, but the anger that you have here in knowing finally that the government, we have government officials here who are saying, no, leave him out. But then on the other side, there are some people who are saying, and honestly, I've heard this in the last 24 hours, it was 35 years ago. Come on, let's stop worrying about this. That in itself, that would anger me to no end if I heard that.
Well, unfortunately, yes, you're absolutely correct, except for my colleagues and I have gone through this for the past 35 years. This is not the first time that an administration of either side has said, well, let's move on with this, with the hopes that somehow or another they're going to make the big Nixonian breakthrough with Iran. They still haven't figured out the Iranians.
What would you like to see happen, Al? Seriously, if you were sitting in a position of authority in that government right now, in the American government, the Obama administration, what do you think would be the proper action?
Well, there's a certain irony here, and the irony is what I would like to see happen is I would like to see the Iranian government, for the first time, acknowledge that what they did was wrong, perhaps misguided. They can try to take that out, but they haven't even tried to say that what they did was a violation of the very treaties and that they were signatories to, continue to be signatories to. And if I may say, there's a supreme irony here. The irony is that they keep putting forth their rights through diplomacy to do certain things, such as name whatever ambassador they want to name, no matter the background, how anybody else may feel about it. Well, I mean, it's kind of ironic that they didn't feel that they needed to observe diplomatic protocols when they took over an embassy of the United States of America. And mind you, as diplomacy works, every diplomat is an approved and invited guest into the host country.
All right, well, let's get to a simple question here that I haven't asked yet, and perhaps we should. Do you know this man? Do you remember him in any way?
No, I do not.
Well,
okay, please, John, go ahead.
Al, I wanted to ask you, because this is not completely without precedent here. Of course, former President Ahmadinejad was also alleged to have been involved with the Muslim student group. He's been in New York City as well. Just talk to us about what you were feeling when you knew that Ahmadinejad was here in this country as well.
Well, again, it comes back to the same thing. I'm not surprised. These people that have risen to this level in the government pretty much all made their bones by being participants in that takeover, in that quote-unquote illustrious revolution. The reality is they're cowards. They remain cowards. And yes, there's anger, and there's a feeling of betrayal that our government, for the past 35 years, has refused to take our side of this and to let these people continue to do what they do. You know, we weren't the only ones that were victims of the Iranians. You look at the Marine barracks where we lost 241 Marines. The Iranians were responsible for that. And I could go on and on and on and on. The reality of it is those are the people that we're dealing with.
Al, I can understand, obviously, those 444 days, that life-changing ordeal there at the embassy. But stepping back from that, in terms of national policy, a few years ago, it appeared that Iran was ready for its own, well, I guess for lack of a better term, Al, Persian Spring. You saw a rising up of dissent that was quashed, and no efforts by the United States to kindle that type of dissent or to protest on human rights grounds what was transpiring to some of those protesters in Tehran. You talked about the hostage takers being cowards. How would you describe our government when it comes to Iran right now?
Confused.
Just a failure?
That's a one-word answer. That there continues to be this misguided impression that if we clear the table, that'll be it, and then we will proceed on an equal footing. Well, we can't do that. There is still unfinished business. And I don't understand how anybody believes that someone that will not acknowledge what is in full view entire world, that they violated international law, that they violated some of the basic, most long-standing principles of country-to-country interaction, can deny that they did anything wrong, and then we are going to accept going forward that they won't do it again. I don't understand that.
Al, I think a lot of us have those same questions. We appreciate your perspective on what may yet transpire, and want to thank you for your time today on America's Forum.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And again, a situation, Ed, where you reach out to someone who literally lived that history. Thanks for your efforts in reaching out to Ed. We appreciate it.
If anybody's voice should be heard on this, it's him and the other hostages that are still surviving right now. More to come here on America's Forum. We'll be right back after this.